is up today? Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Make Money and Have Fun show. We are rounding out Author Month. This is the last week of Author Month. We're getting some of the coolest people in this month. Every single day, I'm going live with different authors. And the really cool thing is that these authors are writing in all different areas. Some people are children's book authors. Some people are writing fiction, nonfiction, business books, self-help books, you name it. It's all across the board here. And I am just meeting some really amazing and interesting people. And if you're still here tuning in with us, give yourself a round of applause for hanging out with us throughout all of Author Month, having a blast, and of course, making money and having fun. Let's get into it.
My motto in life is make money and have fun. I'm on a mission to show everyone how to make money, yeah, and have fun. I'm all about making money and having fun.
All right, so here is the deal. Yesterday we talked to Tom, who had an amazing story, was changing the world out there with what he was doing. But today, we got to bring the ladies back in here. We've had a few gentlemen coming in here. We had a few ladies. We got to get the lady vibes going on. So please help me welcome today's guest, Miss Victoria Lucido. What's up, Victoria?
Hi, Fred.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Are you ready for all of this?
I am. I'm a little nervous, but I'm having fun. It's exciting.
I love it. Don't be nervous. There's no reason to be nervous here. Just pretend that we're like sitting in the living room having a chat.
Okay, good.
Or whatever. I just have fancy lights on me and a funny looking background, and I'm wearing some weird red jacket. Other than that, this is totally normal. Victoria, what's going on? Where are you joining us from?
I'm joining you from the Monterey Peninsula in California.
Okay.
And a little town called Delray Oaks, but people probably wouldn't know that. So it's near Monterey, Carmel, PG. Pebble Beach. Beautiful area.
Got it.
Nice place to be sheltered in place.
Yeah. I'm guessing you don't have a foot of snow outside like I do.
No, we do not. No.
Well, lucky you. If you want, I'll trade places with you.
I would like to come visit. I'd like to go anywhere right now.
Okay.
Get on a plane.
That's fair. That's fair. I mean, I kind of turned my basement office into like a traveling station, a virtual traveling station.
Nice.
By doing this show. Tom was on yesterday. He's from Canada. He was our first international guest, which was really cool for this show. Yeah. So what's it, 11 a.m. there, I guess it would be for you?
10 o'clock.
10 a.m.? Gotcha.
Yeah.
It's 1 p.m. over here. It's still freezing. It's still cold, and we got a foot of snow outside. So, count your blessings. So, Victoria, tell us about yourself. Who are you? What do you do? Tell us your story.
Well, let's see. Okay. Where do I start? I grew up on the Monterey Peninsula and went to school. I'm just going to kind of focus on my educational thing since that's what my book's about. And I went through the Monterey Peninsula Unified School District as a kid. Then I grew up and became a teacher and taught in that district for 33 years. And in 2018, I retired, not having any idea what was going to happen for these teachers right now. That's crazy. But anyway, so I retired, and I still wanted to be part of the conversation with education. So I started writing a book, and it just really flowed out of me really quickly. And basically, I wanted to write about all the things I learned in 33 years of teaching that when I was a brand new teacher, I didn't know. So that's what I did. And then unfortunately, as soon as my book was published, the COVID hit. So as soon as things are back to normal, whatever that means, I'm going to be out talking about it, trying to get in on conferences and stuff. But right now, I'm just kind of gardening, exercising. I'm going to be growing some stuff starting in March, some plants, and just enjoying my life. Basically, when I stopped teaching, I decided I don't want anybody to control me, and I don't want to control anybody else.
Perfect.
It's a lot about control.
I love that. Here's the funny thing. We can always look at our current situation or any situation really as either a blessing or a curse. And I was in the same boat where I decided in the beginning of 2020, I'm like, I think I want to transition from being a real estate investor into being a professional speaker. And then COVID came by and they were like, yeah, you're going to have to work a little bit harder at this than you initially intended. So we adjust, we modify, we adapt, we do what we have to do. And I still have fun with it. That's why I run this show every day. That's why I bring cool people like you on here, because it is just a blast doing this all the time. So tell us about your book. So you were brought up in the teaching world, which I was in a more unconventional way as well, but I still consider myself a teacher, an educator, a coach, mentor, however you want to look at it in that realm. So tell us kind of how your teaching evolved into a book and what it's about. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Okay, so let me think about this. Okay, so basically, like I said, when I was teaching, there's a lot of things I learned that aren't in books. And I had a lot of books when I retired. I mean, a whole bunch of them on my bookshelf and to tell you the truth, I never even read even one of them cover to cover. Because as a teacher, you're so busy, you don't have time to read through a big, thick book. A lot of it's about statistics, which are great, but it doesn't really help you in the classroom right now to know some statistics. So basically, I started jotting down topics when I was getting ready to retire that teachers had come to me worried about, like budget cuts, like things like the staff lounge, things like that, where nobody tells you about that. But when you get to a school and you're new in the school, it can be like you're like a little kid and you want to feel like you want to make friends, but how do you do that? And so uncommon topics is what I put in my book. So I started jotting down all these topics that I didn't really see in other books, or maybe I saw in other books but needed to be repeated. So once I retired, cleaned out my classroom, had my retirement party, which I could have, thank God, because it wasn't COVID. I feel so blessed for all the things I was able to do that I didn't even realize how special they were. Anyway, so then I started writing, like I said, things that I thought might help teachers that ask or nobody would tell them what to do when you have a substitute. Like, I remember when I was teaching, teachers would have substitutes. They come back to a classroom that was, destroyed. So I laid out things that you can do to have a good, successful sub experience, things like that are real important that I didn't feel like anybody talked about. So my book's kind of a down and dirty, no nonsense. Hey, these are some tips you can use right now. And you can read it from cover to cover, or you can just look at one topic and say, hey, what did she say about this? I'm having a sub tomorrow. Or, oh, back to school nights tonight. How do I have a successful back to school night? Just stuff like that. So anyway, my book is different in the sense, in my opinion, I haven't seen a book like it.
Yeah.
It's pretty honest. If you go to my reviews on Amazon, you'll see that a lot of people say over and over, you're very honest. I try to have a lot of respect for everyone, but also, and respect, but also kind of tough love stuff too.
Sure. You have to.
Not being a friend with your students. I've seen a lot of teachers come in and try to be really friendly with the kids. You should be friendly.
Yep,
but then they try to be friends, and then they wonder why the kids are cussing in their class or saying things in their class, because the kids see you more as a peer. Like I said in my book, you should be like, in my opinion, somebody they're a little afraid of, like how you're afraid of your dad if you do something wrong, and he loves you, but you want to behave for him. That's kind of how I see teachers, that they should be somebody that not what is it called? I called it like a healthy fear, not a bad fear, of course, but where you think, oh, I don't want Miss Lucido mad at me, or I don't want to do that because when she gets back, I don't want her upset, that kind of thing. Whereas I see a lot of kids, it seems like they didn't really care if the teacher was upset. I'd walk around in classrooms and I'd see like a kid really behave for one teacher, and then another period be horrible for another teacher. And it was basically the teacher was setting the expectation or the boundary about how they should behave in the classroom.
100%. So your book essentially is like the teacher survival guide. It's teaching teachers how to teach. in a sense.
Exactly. Teachers, and, I talk about parents, how to deal with
Mm-hmm.
parents, how to call parents, because I made some mistakes with parents where you call when you're upset, and then the
Sure.
parent. And one of my chapters is about angry moms, because I'm a mom myself, so I get it. But you do not want to get a mom mad at you. Sometimes the dads would be, hey, what are you thinking, to their kid? But the moms, yeah. So mama bears come in, so you got to be really careful with the moms. And like I said, I get it. I'm a mom myself. And anyway, your mom probably stuck up for you at school. Did you ever get in trouble at school?
Sometimes. It's funny because, I was a martial arts instructor for about 5 years. So I taught children from 3.5 all the way up to adults. So it was a different dynamic, obviously, stepping onto the mat to teach a room full of 5-year-olds than it is to teach a class full of adults. So it was almost like wearing multiple hats and training myself in different forms of public speaking, different forms of, emotional cadence and animation and those sorts of things. What kind of, I guess, advice would you like I'm assuming in your book you give different advice to a college professor than you do to a kindergarten teacher, right?
Well, in a way, but
Okay.
basically, I taught mainly middle school. I taught some high school. I
Mm-hmm.
taught one college class. But people are people. And I've seen teachers misbehave, like at staff meetings, if they don't trust the administrator. So people are people, basically.
Yeah.
And people have read my book that aren't in education and said that these are just best practices for managing people. So I can't really give advice. It's not about curriculum or anything. My book's more about just managing people. Like, what do you do when your new administrator comes in?
Yeah.
Well, I would think that even if you're in another job and your new boss comes in, that could apply to you. Like, what do you do when you get the new boss? I had a lot of administrators come and go. And some teachers would get really upset if they lost their administrator. Like, oh, I lost my administrator. What am I going to do? I'm like, you know what? you're going to go through a lot of administrators. So these are some things to do. I call it how to train your administrator, because basically every time a new admitted principal would come in, I'd feel like, okay, I got to train a new principal how to treat me, how to let me do my job in a respectful way. So things like that. So it's basically not really about elementary or middle or high school,
Right.
but about how do you have your boundaries. It's a lot about having your boundaries, taking care of yourself, how to communicate the best from yourself so that other people can work with you and you can work with others in a harmonious way.
That makes total sense. I completely get that. I'm a firm believer in we teach people how to treat us.
Exactly.
Is basically what you're coming down to. So your message, your lessons in this book are really applicable to the workplace, as an employer, to an employee relationship, to a parent and a kid relationship, to a teacher and a student relationship, and I'm sure many others as well, which really gives it this very universal message. And I think, like you said, it's really something that's new that isn't, I don't really feel is being talked about enough today. So I love
that's
that
what
you're doing that.
I think that a lot of times, like towards the end of my career, a lot of it was focused on technology, the latest technology or the latest silver bullet that's gonna, fix everything, whatever. And a lot of what got lost, I felt like, was just basic principles of classroom management that they didn't teach anymore. And a lot of the teachers, they may be really tech savvy, these young teachers coming in, but some of them didn't know really how to handle a classroom. Like when I was in college, and I was a long time ago, a lot of it was based on classroom management, procedures, and I talk about in my book, a lot of that's considered kind of old school, but it's really not old school because people are people. I mean, since we walk this planet as cave people, we're people. and And that doesn't change. And kids are no different than you or me. I mean, if we can get away with stuff, sometimes we do, right? I
Yeah.
mean, if we can do it, we will. And
Good
kids
point.
are like that too, you know? And so basically, I feel like my book talks a lot about things that have kind of been forgotten, but are really necessary. Because if you cannot manage your classroom and if your students don't respect you and are not listening to you, you can't get anything done. You can't get
Exactly.
anything done.
And I think that the important point to bring up is that that kind of behavior carries over beyond just the classroom. You know, we looking at it from a employer employee perspective. I always basically the way that I've always done it is anytime that I was in a job interview, I was always interviewing my employer as much as they were interviewing me because I
Yeah.
wanted to see if I would enjoy working for this person. And that's, you know, at the same time, they're looking to see if they would enjoy having me work for them. And so it seems to be like a message almost of the better you can manage yourself, the better you can manage others.
Yeah, exactly. Because kids, like I say in the book, kids, you don't have to open your mouth for them to size you up. The way you carry yourself, the way just basically your words. There's now here's a some statistic that I can't remember exactly, but something about how only a very small percentage of what you say people actually
Mm-hmm.
listen to. It's your body language. And so
Yep.
I would do, like I taught drama for years, so I would do little exercises with that where I'd tell the kids, I'd say, you know, because they think when they start doing scenes that everybody's listening to what they're saying in the scene. I said, but if your body and your face aren't congruent with what you're saying, nobody believes you. And, you know, I'd say, imagine if your parents came to back to school night and I said, yeah, I really love my job. It's great. Your kids they're, they're great. I'm really happy to be here. I said, I'm saying this stuff, but look at my body. That's what they're hearing.
Yep.
And so basically when I would stand at my door every morning, you know, and I talk about how to dress, because that's the other thing is that, and again, that's basic stuff, but I think teachers forget because some teachers would say, you know, the kids are just doing this or that in my class. And I'd see the teacher and they'd be like in a sweatshirt and yoga pants or whatever. And I'd say, you know, you might think about what you're wearing. And I'd say it as nice as possible, but basically the first month of school, I'm like dressed like a professional.
Sure.
And I would really think about what I'm wearing, that I wanted to be approachable and feminine, but I'm here for business. And kids picked up on that, you know, and I'd
Mm-hmm.
stand at the door and I'd say, good morning, I'd hold myself. And the kids like, oh, whereas if you, I don't know, it's just that nonverbal thing is so important.
Exactly.
Kids would say, teachers would tell me, I'm telling them blah, 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 blah. I said, but first of all, don't whine and don't repeat it over and over. You stand there, you say it and you wait and you give them the look. The look carries a lot of weight.
It's almost funny because it comes back to that conversation of like, I shouldn't need to tell you this in a certain regard. But I totally get it. We used to have like catchphrases when I was a martial arts instructor before all of this entrepreneur stuff. And one of them was, it's not what you do, it's how you do it. And it comes down to those little things. I mean, we had scenarios where one kid would show up for class. And now it's my job to create an energetic and, you know, very fired up, very alive, emotionally high energy, you know, place with one person in the room.
That's so hard.
Right? It is. It's a very difficult thing to do. And occasionally it happens. You know, you get two people there and you have to create this energy and make it exist that wouldn't normally exist without you. And the idea is that it's whatever you bring. It was always this discussion of if you're having fun, they're having fun. You know,
But
and
sometimes you gotta fake it.
exactly.
You're a really good actor.
That's the whole idea.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's so hard because like I said, I taught
I'm not
drama.
actually this energetic. I'm just making it all up.
Sometimes you probably do. Sometimes you probably think, oh my God, I'm tired,
Yeah.
I don't feel well.
You have
gotta
to
go in there. I mean, I had to do that lots of times. You know, the kids don't want to hear about whatever. I gotta get in there. Yeah,
Mhm.
but I was just gonna say I taught drama for years, and at the middle school I'd always have like 30 kids or whatever. We do improv, or we, you know, these high energy things. And then in Carmel, after I retired, they asked me to teach a drama class before COVID and stuff. And I said, okay, I'd do it at this theater, but only 5 kids signed up. And I was like, how am I going to do this with 5 kids? But I went in and I did it. But I'm telling you, it was hard. It was really hard to try to do improv, to take that energy for an hour and a half with 5 kids every day. Anyway, so I get what you're saying, but you have, they're like, their parents paid for this or whatever, and that's your job.
Yeah.
And
you gotta show up, you gotta perform no matter what. I mean, there's days where I'm like, oh, did I really schedule a show today? Dang it. I gotta go live with this Victoria person. What the heck?
I know.
I can't believe it. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna make this the best show ever. That's always like my go-to, is like whenever I don't feel like it, I'm like, you know what, this is gonna be my best one yet.
Well, and the thing is, once you get in there, and like for me with that Carmel job, once I got in there, I saw the kids, and the kids wanted to be there. And then, that feeds it. Like my husband and I went to New York one summer and got to be in the David Letterman audience. And it was interesting because
awesome.
They said to the audience, they said, you better give David your energy. You got to clap loud, no woo-hooing. They said, no woo-hooing. We're going to escort you out of here if you do that. You got to clap loud. We're keeping it cold so that you stay awake. And they said, because David, that's how Dave gets his energy, is from you. So I thought, wow, that's really interesting, that we're part of what's making him, it was really neat to be in the audience and to know that we were contributing to his energy. And it makes sense, but I never thought about it.
Yeah, for me, that's one of my favorite parts about teaching is the fact that I get to walk into a room and figure out, what does this room need? Do they need to be calmed down? Do they need to be brought up? Do they need to be do they need to be inspired? Do they need to be moved? Do they need to be, disciplined? Like what does this room need right now? And that's like the fun game for me, especially like, having one kid in class is difficult, but what's even worse is having 2 kids where one kid is normally very energetic and the other kid is very typically more lethargic and kind of shyer and not as outgoing, because now they're feeding off of each other's energy in a sense. And they're kind of like competing with each other. And I have to create this middle ground between the 2 of them. It just becomes an interesting emotional game at that point to play and see how you create that dynamic in the room.
Yeah, well, and even like as a teacher, I would have maybe 6 periods a day, 7 periods, depending on the schedule they had that year. And each classroom had its own personality. Like one classroom might be really calm, another classroom might be really hyper, just each classroom, I had to kind of be different with each classroom because each classroom had their own personality. It was really interesting. And that's one thing I do miss about teaching. Is that going to that classroom and those kids and getting the energy from the kids. And sometimes it was really stressful, let's face it. But
that's the job.
They're so interesting, kids are. And it's been really exciting because of social media. I didn't get on social media till I retired because I just wanted that privacy.
Yep.
And not that I post anything crazy anyway now, but a couple days ago, some students that I taught in 1985, my very first year of teaching, found me on social media. And it was so sweet. I mean, they're in their 40s now. And one was looking for me for a while, but I have a different last name. I have been remarried since I taught in 1985. So she found me. And that's one of the reasons it's hard to find me. But anyway, she found me, and then she put the word out to a bunch of other students that I had. And I've been getting all these sweet messages. And from these kids that I had in 1985, and it's just, as a teacher, there's so many rewards, it really is a wonderful position. And that's why I try to tell, wonderful profession, I try to say in my book is, because I talk about the pitfalls and the survival things, but I also say there's so many rewards, but you can't expect them, because kids, if you go out there looking for those rewards, I don't know, that's manipulative, and that's not what you're there for. But if you just get in there and you really care about the kids, and I'm sure you've had this with your students, there's so many rewards that come back to you if you just don't expect them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah, it's the things that you least expect. I mean,
Yeah,
there were days where I would walk off the mat and a student would just come give me a high five, and I'm like, that's awesome.
I know it is awesome.
Yeah,
You know,
little things like that you're like, oh man, I'm doing such cool stuff over here. Look at me, look at
yeah.
me.
'Cause sometimes, I with teaching, I think I just can't do this anymore. It's just so hard. There was so many things put on teachers, and that's why I really feel for teachers, and especially now, because there's a lot put on teachers. But then something would happen. I'd get a note on my desk, or somebody would send me a letter, or a kid would want a hug, or whatever, and I'd say, okay, I'm doing okay. I'm in the right place, and
I
I'm
get
going to
it.
stick with this because there are a lot of, I'm sure with any profession, but there are a
Mhm.
lot of challenges with teaching. Um, just so much that goes on that it's stressful. And I used to, when things used to happen when I was in my 20s or whatever, I just, I'd be in tears, I'd be stressed. By the time I was at the end, I'd be like, we'll figure it out.
Yep. Another day in the
We'll figure
office.
it out. Yeah,
That's
now they're talking about
I
schools
totally get it.
opening here in April, but I don't know if are they opened up where you guys are, schools?
I'm actually not sure. I mean, I don't have kids of my own, so I don't know what the I think like half of them are, half aren't, or they're like, who knows?
Yeah,
That's always my interpretation of it is who knows. I do everything I can to wake up and share my message with the world each day, whether it's through this show or through other mediums or YouTube, wherever, that kind of stuff, because I just do what I have to do to adapt to it. So
yeah.
tell us about your book. What's the title of it? How can people get a hold of it? All that kind of
Okay, so I got it right here. It's called Classroom Confidential, How I Survived 33 Years in a Public School Classroom, and you can too.
nice.
And I'm just going to give you a couple of my chapter titles, just real
Please
quick to give
do.
you an idea. Um, So I have Dress the Part, Staff Lounge Fitting In, Seize Your Power, 3 B's of Teaching, Boundaries, Boundaries, Boundaries. Facts about facilities. So I talk about that because your classroom is really important. I mean, you're in there a lot. Um, let's see. Budget cuts, surviving changes are supposed to fix everything. How to train your administrator. Teacher trust. I'll talk about that for a sec. Again, those are obvious, like teacher trust. I talk about things that you're with these teachers, and if you want to have them support you, you really need to have their trust. And some teachers kind of felt like their classroom is the only classroom that really mattered. And that's a problem. Like just walking your classroom through the hallway to the library, for example. I was really strict about that. I tell students, you do not talk when you're walking through the hallway. No talking. Because if I say quiet talking, some kids think this is quiet. That's quiet talking, Miss Lucido. No, that's not quiet talking. So I'd walk them through the hallway because as you're walking by their classrooms, if your kids are all loud, I mean, something small like that, it makes other teachers feel like you don't care about their classroom. Just things like that are so obvious, but I saw so much where people would walk by. Or the other thing is teachers that talk about other teachers to students. Stuff like that you shouldn't be doing because kids come and say, oh, Miss So and so said this about, like, why is she talking about me to my student? Or, like if kids would come in complaining about another teacher and the teacher would chime in. I don't know, really obvious things like that. But I've seen people do it. And it's, if you want to work with these people, you want them to trust you because those kids are going on to the next grade, but you're going to be there. One other thing is I did this thing called singing telegrams. I write a lot about in my book because it was a big community. I really focused on building community at the school. And these singing telegrams we do right before spring break. And my kids would run in and out of classrooms with singing and delivering these telegrams. And I was really strict about it because I wanted teachers to trust me. And if my kids were out there, like they'd be out on campus all day running in and out of classrooms. And it was a really fun day. And I did it for my whole teaching career. But I was only able to do it, I believe, because I had really strict boundaries with my students because I wanted the teachers to trust me. I wanted them to say, hey, this is fun. Anyway, things like that, if you're going to be at a school, you want other teachers to know that you got their back and that you're thinking about them. And even like the office staff. I know the office staff sometimes would get really frustrated because they put a form in our box and teacher wouldn't sign it and give it back to them. So I say in the book, don't make other people's job harder because of you. They need that back. Just do it. Why? So just little things like that people might say when they read the book. Well, yeah, of course. But you know what? A lot of people didn't do it. And so my book is filled with a lot of things like that maybe people know, but forget or don't realize how important it is just to do basic courtesies for or like with the custodians. I talk a lot about treat those custodians with love and respect because those custodians and the people in the office and the librarian and everything, those support staff are so important to your job. And if you think, I don't know, whatever you think that, well, they have to come in and they have to do this or that. No. Treat these people with respect because they're out there working for you and making your life easier. So you need to do everything you can to support them.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's the simple concept of, a rising tide lifts all ships. Let's pull this thing together and make it all work.
Yeah.
It just makes everybody's life that much easier, that much better, and that much more exciting at that point.
And more fun, more of a community. I was at the last school for a really long time. And actually, well, I'm not going to talk about the last school. I was going to say something, but I'll hold off on that. But anyway, because there's just some things happening in our district that schools might be closing. And anyway, nothing's a done deal. But anyway, I was at that school a long time. And so it's really important to me to have a good reputation, to when I get a new administrator, when they go ask around about everybody and ask about me, they'd say, yeah, she's doing her job. Don't have to worry about her. Because that's the other thing is that if the word on the street is that you're a problem, I've seen teachers where the administrators are in their classroom, keeping tabs on them. I never wanted to be that teacher. So anyway.
I get it. So let's talk to our aspiring authors out there. This is Author Month. So I always like to talk to the person who is in the place where they want to write a book, but they never have before, and they're not sure what to do. What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's in that space?
I think probably the first thing I'd say is, well, for me, what I started doing was jotting down ideas. And that's why I taught English for years too. And I'd say, start jotting down. If you have nothing to say, then I don't know how you could write a book if you have nothing to say. So first of all, start jotting down what you have to say. And then start writing it. Just start. Since I wrote my book and I'd run into people in town or whatever, and they'd say, what do you up to? And I'd say, oh, I write this book. And I can't tell you how many people said to me, oh, I have a book I want to write, or I'm going to write a book. Or I said, well, then you got to do it. Sit down and start writing. But again, to me, it helps if you start writing down what you have to say. Start getting an idea of what you have to say, and then start writing it. For me, what helped too is I got an editor. It really helped to get an editor because a friend of mine, it was really fortunate because a friend of mine knew an editor and she said, hey, would you want me to hook you up? And I said, yes. And there was some cost involved, but I'm telling you, it was worth it because my editor, Marcia, she is an author too. And she helped me so much because there were things that I wrote that she's, no, don't write this. I mean, she really helped me refine my book a lot. And she knew how to submit it to publishers. I'd written a children's book a few years ago, and I didn't know how to submit it to publishers. And right. I never got any word back at all. And she said, first thing you do is go through, and I can't remember the name of the book. It's a big, thick book about publishing. But I went through and she said, find publishers that publish books like yours. So, and I didn't know to do that the first time. So I went through this. You might know what the book's called. I have it in my room. I can't remember. But anyway, it's this big, thick book of publishers. So I went through and I found 10 publishers that publish books like mine. And then she said, do you want to send them off, your book off to, after we did several rough drafts of my book, I think we did maybe 3 or 4 rough, I had her, I fix her whatever in her corrections, then I send it to her again, fix her, we did that 3 or 4 times, it took a few months. Anyway, she said, do you want me to send the book to publishers or do you want to do it? I said, you know what, Marcia, I'd really like you to do it. And I paid her to do it and it was worth it because she knew how to do it, because some publishers want just the first 50 pages. Some publishers want the whole book. Some publishers want a hard copy. And so anyway, within that first 10, I heard back from Morgan James Publishing, and she sent me a text or email and she said they want to talk to you. I don't think I would have gotten anywhere without her, because first of all, some of the things I wrote in the first draft, I think, what was I thinking? I mean, I just kind of let it spill out of me, and she's like, no, don't do that. No, what's this up here? No, make that nicer, make that smoother, or take that out. So anyway, like I said, start writing down your ideas, just start brainstorming, and then start writing. Don't put it off. Mm-hmm. And then once you get some sort of a rough draft, like when I went to Marcia, I was really concerned because I thought she's probably going to say no. And I said, well, here it is. Read over it, see what you think. And so then we met back up again, and she said, no, I like it. I think you got something. I'm like, oh my God, I was so excited. So anyway, the whole for people that want to be an author, you better just start doing it. Because like I said, I've had several people say, oh, I want to write a book, or I started to write a book, or I'm thinking about writing a book. And Marcia had a really good comeback, because I was really worried when I put my book out there, because I thought, this is very personal to me. And I've seen people make really mean comments on social media about, celebrities or whatever. And I was thinking, God, what if people don't like it? Or what if they are really mean or make mean comments or something? And it was scary to just put yourself out there to the world, Mm-hmm. And she said, I've had people come up to me and criticize like her book. And then she said, so I say, oh, and when is your book getting published? And I said, that's a great comeback. And fortunately, I really have to say, people have been really supportive. I've been really happy. But if somebody comes along and they don't like it, or, oh, well, you said that, I'm like, well, that's just for me, what I said. But it is scary. So people that put a book out there, just know you're putting yourself out there to the world. And anyway, I'm glad I did it. And that's what I would suggest. Totally. Like I said, you might have to invest some money. Mm-hmm. I did, and I don't know that I've gotten my money back. I'm sure I haven't, but I didn't really write it for money. I did it because I was just wanted to share my experience, yep. And if I make a little money, I made a little money, great. But yeah, invest in yourself.
Yep. That's it. Totally. I totally agree with that. I mean, I started off my entrepreneurial journey as a real estate investor. So I'm very familiar with investing and arbitrage and debt and money and all that kind of stuff. And I totally agree. I'm always for bringing in the professionals where the professionals are needed. My first book that I wrote it all by myself. I didn't have anybody else write this book. And it took me like a year and a half, almost 2 years to write it. And I read it the other day and I'm like, God, this book is horrible. And compared to what I have today, I mean, this was my philosophy at the time when I was 21 years old, 5 years ago, and it's expanded since then.
Yeah.
But like you said, I wrote it for 2 reasons. One, I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it, and 2, I felt like I had something to say at that point. The last book that I wrote that's coming out this fall, like September, October-ish, which is Make Money and Have Fun, the book coming out. I feel like, have you seen Spaceballs, the movie?
Of course, yeah.
You remember the scene with Yogurt where he's like down in his cave and he's like, what do you do down here? I do merchandising. And he's like, we got Spaceballs, the t-shirt, Spaceballs, the underwear, like all this stuff. I feel like that with Make Money and Have Fun. I'm like, I got Make Money and Have Fun, the show, the course, the mastermind, the book. It's just becoming a thing. But the point is that book that I wrote it in 6 months because I hired a ghostwriter. I had it edited in 2 weeks because I hired an editor.
You're talking about your latest book? You're talking about your latest,
yeah. Make Money and Have Fun, which is actually not out yet, but it's coming out. I brought on a professional publisher. So I had a whole team of people around me to help make this thing happen and to help make it work, which I felt like at first when I was in the space where I wrote my first book and where my mindset was at that time, I felt like in a way that's like cheating because I didn't actually, put the pen on the paper and stuff like that. But today I'm like, what was I talking about?
Well, it's all your ideas, right?
It's like, that's like saying, we put a new kitchen in our house. Well, no, you didn't. The contractor did. It's like, no, I hired the contractor to come and swing a hammer, but it's my kitchen. You know what I mean? It's the same concept in a sense. And so I'm totally behind. Yeah. Hire all the professionals that you need, invest in yourself as much as you can. In fact, what I say to people is those who invest the most in themselves will have the most invested back into them. It's the law of reciprocity, the karma, however you want to think about it, in my mind is 100% true. The more that you give to yourself, the more the world will give back to you.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah, because like I said, with my book, I think about some things that I was going to say in the book. I'm so grateful that Marcia, I can't even say what they were, but I just think, well, I would have been so embarrassed now if I would have written that. But it took another set of eyes to see it, for me to then see it,
Sure.
And so it's good to, invest in yourself. And like I said, it did cost some money. It was worth it. I do not think I would have this book out if it hadn't been for Marcia. I wouldn't have known what to do. Exactly.
That's the whole point. Another thing that I always look at when it comes to writing a book or anything like that is just the fact that you bring on a second set of eyes, like you said, allows everybody to play a different role at that point. For instance, with my first book, I got caught in the weeds of writing it, right? Because I was actually writing it. I was typing it out, on Microsoft Word and putting the words on the page. And what I realize is as I read through it now, the readability is lacking to a certain degree. But with bringing on the ghostwriter in this most recent book, she spent her time putting the words on the page, and I was able to spend my time looking at, okay, where is the reader at? Where do they need to go? What phase of the process are they in? And what makes the most sense for them to go through next? Mm-hmm. And so just having those different perspectives, it now adds a new layer to it and something else that you can look at and go, okay, now this is starting to really make sense and really become a book at this point, as opposed to just words on a page.
And also, you probably never would have gotten to the book you're about to publish if you hadn't written the first book. You did it. And if somebody reads it and says, oh, it's like, hey, you know what? You write a book.
Yeah.
You try it. You know what I mean?
I'm so happy when I get haters now because I'm like, yes, they noticed.
I haven't gotten look at me. I'm gonna be afraid.
Oh, it's the best. I'm like when I start getting the hate comments on my YouTube channel and things like that, I just write in the comments, "Thanks for boosting this post." Right?
Well, that's true. That's
you
true.
Push it back up to the top with your comment that doesn't even make sense.
But basically, too, you said you were only 21 years old. I mean, I'm 63 years old, so it took me a long time. But I needed all that time to write what I wrote. Right. If I would have written it when I first started teaching, I don't even know what I would have said. I mean, it would have been a very different perspective if I wrote that when I was in my 20s, So good for you for just getting in there and not being the person that says, I want to write a book or I'm going to write. You did it,
There you go. And then I wrote a second one too. I got this one as well. I wrote this a few years later. the story is it's a funny story that I always tell. The day after I published this book. So I just did self-publishing, KDP, real simple. The day after I published it, I'm like, that's it. I'm never writing another book again because it was so arduous and tedious and such a long process. And the day after that, I woke up and the only thing I wanted to do was write.
Wow.
And so what I did was I started blogging and I started writing blog posts consistently for about 4 years, like consistently inconsistent for about 4 years. And then after 4 years, I was like, you know what? Why don't I just stick them in a book? And that's where the second book came along and happens to be now. So that's the story.
You had something to say. I mean, like I said, with kids, when I taught English and we do 5-paragraph essays, and many students would struggle with writing, and like we had to write about Eleanor Roosevelt or whatever. I say, start writing down things about her. What do you want to say about her? What did she do that, when you start like you do with your blog, you started writing down things, that were important to you, thought you had things, and then you said, now I've got enough to even put in a book. And I guess a lot of books start with blogs too. That's what, for me, I told my son.
I was the other way.
Oh yeah, you went the other way.
I wrote the book first. And that was the problem was I was like, man, I have so much more that I want to say, but I don't want to wait another 1.5 2 years to write another book to give it to people. I want to give it to them right now, today. And that's when I discovered blogging. And I was like, oh, this makes so much sense. I can upload it in 15, 20 minutes. It's out there for the world. You can have it. You can use it for what you need it for. I can inspire who needs to be inspired. And then, after 4 years of doing that, I'm like, I got 250 blog posts here. Why don't I put them into a book or something like that, about 250?
Yeah, and then you have an audience. Now you have an audience, which is really important. That's what I'm trying to get right now. I don't know that I'll write another book because the marketing part is so hard, especially right now. Maybe when kids get back in the classroom and I can maybe try to get to conferences and stuff. But the marketing during COVID of a book of classroom, it's been really challenging. But I figure they're going to go back to school.
It's all a matter of one, how creative you can be, and two, looking at the best part of it. I used to say, dang it, I wanted to be a professional speaker, and now COVID's here. And now I just say, hey, COVID told me that I need to work harder to do this. So how much work do we need to put into this, right? And that's like just shifting that little languaging in my head makes it more doable at that point.
Yeah, well, believe me, I'm finding every pathway I can to market my book,
This is right here. Look at this. Everybody go buy her book. I love it. So Victoria, let's wrap it up here. We're getting close on time, but what would you want to leave our audience with today? What words of empowerment, encouragement, whatever it might be that you want to leave them with today?
Wow. I guess this isn't really about my book, but what I've been thinking about is just how grateful I am. I'm going to talk about the COVID thing because life has changed so much for right now, but it's really made me grateful for all the things I do have, and for, my wonderful family that I get to see, and that I have a nice home and live in a nice place, and that I'm healthy. And I don't know, it's really simplified my life in a lot of ways and made me really so grateful for the things I do have. And also I was talking to a friend about how much I think I'm always going to appreciate now when things, I don't know what normal is going to be. I don't know if it's going to be like 9/11, where after 9/11, things were never quite the same. And I'm assuming after COVID, things are never going to be quite the same. I don't know what it's going to look like. But I do think that I'm going to just really appreciate things a lot more, appreciate being able to go to a wedding, go to a classroom and see a teacher with students in the classroom, sit inside of a restaurant, so there's a lot of blessings out there. And it sounds like you, Fred, are doing the same thing, as saying, okay, this is what we have. And maybe getting back to teaching, maybe teaching really prepared me for that, because in teaching, there were constantly challenges, new things that would happen. You'd have a set lesson plan and the fire drill would go off, or the computer wouldn't work, and you constantly have to be using that side, that right side of your brain. You know, I think that's why I liked improv and drama so much, because it's really focused on using that right side of your brain. Like, okay, what can I do now? And so I kind of want to say that I'm in harmony with you, that, yeah, things are different right now, but we're adapting and we have so much to be grateful for. And I know people are suffering, but I also see a lot of people helping people, and I'm trying to do that too. So anyway, I think life is good, and I really appreciate this opportunity with you. And anyway, I guess that's where I want to end up, is just saying that I'm not worried, that I feel like I'm in exactly where I'm supposed to be right now.
Yep.
And maybe
Yes,
I don't
you are.
understand it right this minute, but I think, yeah, I'm where I'm supposed to be. And that's,
We
I'm just
all are.
counting my blessings.
Everything in this world that you want, you already have. If you choose to live in appreciation and gratitude, it makes it that much easier and that much more fun to just go through whatever it is that we're going through, whether it's a pandemic or whether it's an exciting, beautiful day for you. Waking up every day, having that appreciation and gratitude in your heart and in your soul, that's what gets us through. Victoria, this has been awesome stuff. I'm so excited to have you here. Did you have a good time?
I did. Thank you, Fred. I was
love
really
it.
nervous, but you put me at ease. Thank you.
No need to be nervous over here on the Make Money and Have Fun show, because all we do is we make money and we have fun. And for those of you that are listening, I hope you do the same, and we will see you again very, very soon. Have a good one, everybody.
Thank you.